I would say interesting is probably the better word. But yeah, they've been good. Um, I decided to
So tell me a little bit. What do you mean they're interesting? What's going on?
yeah. So I did uh I guess a few protest banners for a company in Bend, and that ended up having a very interesting uh the results of the banners and how people responded to them were expected, but it was unfortunate given the context and the situation the banners were trying to address, and the history that Oregon has and Bend has with as it pertains to um, you know race relations and expressing that, uh, and so it was unfortunate, but it's something that we went into knowing uh, what would happen if we did it right. And so it's essentially it's sad to see that like we were right. It's unfortunate to see that like we understood the situation enough to know that this was going to happen. Um, it's just sad to see that. And so it's sort of bittersweet. I would say. I think given my girlfriend's eagerness to and frustration because of the situation, I think we'll be writing sort of an opinion piece, sort of addressing the overall problem and the experience we had with it. And so yeah, that's such is life. With that, you can't really. There's only so much you can do.
And it's so funny. Whenever we start talking, I'm like, oh, we should have started recording already.
Oh yeah, I mean, already ahead of you there. I already hit that. I hit that record button because I was like,
Huh?
Ugh. I hit that record button because I was like,
So we're
huh.
recording.
Well, I started recording. We haven't started the podcast, but I started recording.
All right. Let's still record.
Yeah,
Good. Okay.
but
Well, I'm glad that you did
yeah, it's
because it's interesting. I think it's almost good. So if we start like this, that
yeah,
it's like what's going on in your world for this week? Because, like we said, it's ever changing sides of this.
yeah, yeah, and the person, one of my friends that um sort of gave me the opportunity to like work on the banners for his company. He's a white guy, upper middle class. Obviously, like all this stuff doesn't like directly pertain to him, but he understands and he acknowledges it. And so from him, it was an opportunity for him to sort of like get involved and do something, and like sort of like it was his way of like doing something to like further the conversation. And and one of the things that like I like I'm like joking around about it because like when he sort of like presented me with the opportunity, I was like, "Are you sure you want to go this way? Because you like I know how it's going to turn out." And and he was a little more optimistic about it. He was like, "Oh, like I don't know anybody like around us."
Naive is what
Yeah, yeah. I was
he
a uh,
was.
yeah,
Naive.
yeah. And so I was like, like this is what I could expect and everything, and like it might hit a little closer to home than you probably want and all that. He was like, "Oh yeah, like I'm not, I don't think that we don't have friends that that are against Black Lives Matter, anything like that." But but um, but I was like, it's going to reveal some things that like are going to hit a little closer to home, and so it was sad to see that sort of like it was sad to see that manifest, and it was interesting to see like how he sort of like his evolution from like being naive to being more informed, and how like the conversations that we have
Yeah,
now,
educated.
yeah, to where the conversations that we have now are how are like our feelings are in some ways jaded because of that experience, because of the experience that we both have individually, and now that we have like together in this journey, and to the point where like literally the people that were voicing the biggest opinions were the people that were literally downstairs. And so it really like hit close to home for him. And yeah,
Ah,
it was just really interesting. Yeah, it was just really interesting. Um, the
well, I think so the only concern I have about what we're experiencing here is there's a delay. There must be a delay
yeah, I feel like
of some sort on. I feel like if you're talking or I'm talking, you can't hear me, and then like. So I don't know, before we begin to address, how can we address that, or what
I
is the
think
deal? Because I don't know, when you listened to the podcast last week, did you notice it?
it I did notice it a little bit. And I don't notice it as bad now. I think it was worse last week than now. What I'm seeing is that
I agree.
um, I'm seeing that the difference has been in the location that you've been in. Uh, so I don't know if it's because you're too far away
So
from
it's
the.
where that's different.
Yeah, like I'm noticing that because I was experiencing a problem last week, and I've been having to like I had to reset my modem and everything, and so it's not as bad as last week. But I think that it might be a combination of. I don't think that it's Zoom.
On my end.
Yeah, I don't think that it's Zoom because I've been doing a lot more Zoom things this week, and so I think that it might be that like you might have to be a little closer to like the router or something like that, um, or have
So
like a
here's my question for you. So here's my question for you. I Where I'm located right now is at
yeah
my daughter's, and
yeah.
so do you have 15 more minutes and I can go to a different location, not within the house, but to a friend who is actually here, and I can go to her place and there and hope, and then I don't think we would do it, but can you wait 15 minutes and let me do that, or do you want to just move forward?
Actually, let's try you actually calling into the Zoom session. So you have the video up, but we could you can mute the computer, and then you could call into the Zoom
Yes,
session and do the audio. So we could try that.
yes. So so you might need to walk me through that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be doing this on my phone, right?
Yeah. So like you still have the computer up.
It's on my phone.
Yeah. You still have the computer up, but on your phone
Yeah.
you on your phone I think all you have to do is let's see.
Because you sent me the link on my phone to email on my phone.
Yeah.
So is this my?
Hmm.
So if I go to the link that you sent,
Yeah.
so you sent me the meeting ID number and the pass. So I'll just try it on my phone.
Yeah.
Join a meeting. Might have to.
Okay. And then we could just keep the video off.
So it's called using internet audio. Here, please, John. Yep.
Yeah, so we could stop the video.
So I don't know. So let me.
Oops.
Start my video.
Yeah, so start the video and then we'll just mute your audio.
So which one do I mute?
So yeah, so muted the audio and then you have the video. So you have the audio from your phone and then the video from your computer.
So how do I mute? So can
No.
you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're good. You're good.
So I don't hear you on my phone, right?
Oh, you don't hear me on your phone? Hmm.
Because I feel like something's being. Yes, I can
You can?
talk. It's low, but I can. Go ahead, talk again.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yes, no? Maybe?
I don't know if I have you. Okay, good.
We're good? You can hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. Cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Uh huh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I don't. The computer, but it goes better through the phone with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So do I need to be on my computer? I
Um,
have the bridge behind me. How is that? So
uh,
lame.
I don't, I don't know. I don't know if you
Okay, it
need to
doesn't
be.
matter
Yeah, I don't
because we're
think.
not.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be on your computer if your phone is the one that's working.
Has this. Let me see. I'm gonna leave. So I just left my meeting on the computer.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let me just check one thing on my settings. Okay. And I'm just gonna try this. It might make it worse or better. I don't know. And then I have to go get I want to charge my. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And it doesn't feel like the delay. Are you like visually recording too our podcast or no?
I mean, I have like the screen recorder on, but for the most part, it's just a podcast. It's just audio.
Okay. Okay. It's cool. Whatever. Not gonna worry about it. Just gotta find the plug. Okay, so I just think whenever we start talking, we get right into it and it's good immediately pretty much, I think,
Yeah.
with whatever's going on in your world and then kind of the things that I'm experiencing or finding as well.
Yeah.
So place of like, where do we want to start? Or do you want to, because what I did is I went back when we about, or last week about, things that I find and know that stuff. Wow, that is really bad. How do I get rid of this background?
You go to like video, uh, like and choose virtual background. Yeah, so you go to like your video settings.
I'm just doing none. Okay, good. Now
Yeah. Yeah,
I
there you
did
go.
that. Okay, that's much better. Holy cow. Okay. So I went back into we talked about, and I've put it into a Word document to send to you.
Okay.
Started just really writing down what it is that I'm seeing, watching, I have names in front of me, this podcast. So pretty much I'm ready to go whenever you are. And I have some thoughts. I went back and reread some mess through my news feed with people who I know on Facebook. And I have I don't have a big, I'm just family, friends, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I had so there's something I want to read that I think was really interesting. And then also, remember we were talking about a family member who has a different opinion and very much represents, I think, and I even asked him, it's my son-in-law, if he would be willing to come on the podcast and have a conversation with us on this.
Yeah.
Yes. No. He said no initially.
He said no initially.
But he didn't. And I knew he would.
Yeah.
And started talking about, actually, he's a big football person and he does fantasy football. So I don't know. Do we want to start recording on the podcast and then we'll go from there?
Well, yeah, I'm just recording the whole thing, and so yeah, I think we could start from there, and so if you
let's just start. Yeah.
Okay, and so welcome everybody to the Black and White podcast with Steve and Kate, and today it's another interesting week, to say the least. A lot of stuff is happening. I think a lot of public pressure is really ramping up as schools, we get closer to the school year starting, and still the coronavirus is still in its first wave, and we're seeing all the realities of that. We're still in the middle of one of the largest civil rights movements of our lifetime, and on top of that, we're in a recession. It's as of February we're in a recession.
Really?
And so it's we're looking at all these intersections, and it's just been very interesting to sort of navigate that amongst all the other adult problems that we have to deal with. And so how's it been for you?
Well, Dean is a few different things. I live I live in Oregon. My goal was to live in Oregon and Arizona, split my time with my family, my children and grandchildren, which it's actually happening. So I actually a couple weeks ago, and the coronavirus has surged here, which I actually thought it would. I had it actually early diagnosed, because they weren't testing everybody back in February, March, and I didn't have a fever, so they didn't I had all these other symptoms and was really sick for 2 months. So coming back here, there's a virus, and literally 3 people whilst I've been here not go to school again. They had to close down preschools, restaurant, bars, because people have been getting sick, and people I know who tested positive for it, and the reactions have been really interesting. So I'm experiencing that, and I'm like, it is different. Like, restaurant people have to find different jobs because this isn't going away soon.
Yeah.
I have a good friend who's bartender test, and she's a single mother with 2 kids, and she can only pay rent next month. Then she's out of money. Pretty much she's and she doesn't get unemployment benefits again like it was before. So, and then I have an 70s who her son and his girlfriend are living with them, and the girlfriend's definitely got on tests, so she's now been exposed, and so it's just I get a lot of that, and I'm like, life is different as we know it.
Yeah.
Along the Black Lives Matter movement and different opinions about all of that, and kind of the raging that was going on versus now it's settling, at least the circle that I'm in. It's interesting. Some people are very much staying in challenging mode, and others are like tired of it and don't understand certain things. But I certainly see it less for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the sort of this kind of goes back to the point of like only time will tell, because like there'll be waves of like,
Yeah.
looting and rioting and that will pass. And then there's
Yeah.
going to be, like convictions and, sort of like other detractors. And, but then like really sort of like the general message of the Black Lives Matter movement still sort of comes back to that like core focus as those things sort of pass over. And so because I mean, at least in Portland, there's still protests, there's still all this stuff going on. It's just that people aren't talking about looting and rioting anymore. you know it's just like,
Which never, then the attention goes off of it.
yeah, because that was just a timely thing to like, sort of distract from what the whole purpose is. And so, right now they're not talking about looting and rioting. It's just they're being silent now until something else sort of comes up.
Right.
And that's sort of,
Well, the next thing I think that's going to come up, I think the next thing, and it actually came up this week with a family member of mine who, are the athletes going to go back to professional performance? I know the baseball season, they're looking to figure, is trying to do that. And then the football leagues. So, and how that's all going to kind of, but last week I actually was talking to my family member about this podcast, and what he talked about, how he's part of a like fantasy football, he's into all athletics, he watches things, and he and his friends who are part of this fantasy football league, they're going to boycott football this year.
why?
Because of the Colin Kaepernick, what's happening with all of that. I hope he really comes on. I asked him if he would consider coming on this podcast, because he really presents like the voice of people that feel certain ways. And I love this saying, and I don't necessarily agree with you. I understand, right? But I find myself, you and I are in such disagreement. I just want to be a voice that is able to say a white person's questions, perspective, without it being like, I just have to shut up and listen. I know that that's what we agreed upon, and yet hold such an opposing vantage point. And so when I was talking to this family member, it's kind of like certain white voices are just going to go underground. I've heard racism being spoke about, like Black people out in front of them rather than underneath, hidden, and it be really worse. But you can't it's not obvious necessarily. So anyways, he was just saying, we're boycotting, these athletes, spoiled, pampered, have been given enormous opportunities, and I'm told, to some degree, but in some ways, and this isn't the venue. People want events and they want to forget about life. They just want to watch football and not be a part of a political. And so they're not going to watch football this year. They're going to go golfing, they're going to do other activities, but they're not participating. They're going to boycott and infringed upon. You know, you get paid a lot of money and you given opportunity. You know, I've seen what Colin's been trying to do, and I understand it. I have always, but I never did a lot of background searching on him at all. So I was challenged to do that, and so I found out that because member was like, he's got white parents, you know, and I was just like, okay. So I did some background searching, and he has adoptive. He was adopted at 5 weeks old, and but his birth mother is white, and his birth father is, I want to say, somewhere in Africa. I can't remember. I have it up here. So, but he was raised in a white home and then California. And so I've just been doing some searching on that. So it's not like, oh, he comes from a middle class family, you know, and, you know, in a white community. And his parents did, you know, the best that they could, very proactive in heritage. So it was interesting. So I asked this family member if he would come on. And the first is kind of like, no, because one, he doesn't want to hear or be like, I said, you come and say whatever you would like to say. You're not, there can be a dialogue, but this isn't a place where, at least with me within the podcast, there's no disrespect going to be happening. That's a respectful dialogue, honest one. And I said, you know, and whatever anybody else thinks, it's still an important dialogue. You know, disrespectful either way, in the sense of being like having this just shut down and be cursing at each other, hearing the different voice and having the difference of opinions and productively, you know. And I said, you would be welcome to do that, and maybe we'll see from him. And I think it would be a really good perspective.
Yeah, I think
Not saying right or wrong.
well, yeah, I
It's
think, you know, the obviously, you know, anybody that's being critical of Colin Kaepernick and what he was trying to shed light on in this time is very problematic. Um uh because you can it's very hard to argue that what he was talking about was not a serious issue uh, that affects that affects people, and particularly the people that he's watching on the football field in their communities. And so it's often you sort of hear um, this like people are not upset when the NFL has Cancer Awareness Month, and all of the teams wear pink rather than their jersey colors. People aren't upset about that. It's not talking about cancer and talking about how that affects people's lives. It isn't a political issue. It's a issue that people rally behind because there's empathy around that. And but when it comes to stuff that pertains to the players and their community and the black community, which for lack of a better term that's the community that's driving the entertainment of football. You can't. It's really hard for black people to disconnect from the realities of being black, even if they're playing on the football field. Because that it hits close to home for them
well, and I would say I but I would say and so because I don't know that I can even come back with a proper perspective, because I'm not holds that perspective. But this person flat out said, and this is the art people with actors as well who want to take a political standpoint. It's like, look, you and I've worked on movies, so I know how pampered is when they are very pampered, and they are paid very well too. And so their audience is, they have become the work that they do. Their job is to perform as an athlete, and the people who watch and become ardent fans are only really wanting your performance. And this family member of mine is saying, you get paid really well, man, and I have a difference of opinion than you do. Just leave it there. And if you're not going to, I'm sick of this. You get paid great, you know, I want to hear it. I just want to watch football. I just want to watch basketball. I just want to watch baseball. I've had a rough week. So let's just play football, for fuck's sake. I mean,
Yeah, and
that's
and
kind of,
yeah, the interesting that I've seen is that,
to
uh,
some degree.
yeah, like the interesting thing that I've seen with sort of that response is that, um, the protesting and stuff hasn't affected the game. Like this stuff happens before the game even starts.
Yes, it has, because they would say it has, because I have to hear about it all the time.
Well, but it's not affecting the game.
I'm hearing about it now. It's not just about football.
Yeah, well, no,
Well,
yeah, it's like if you watch a football game, like the game of football, they score touchdowns, they run plays, all that stuff. The people, like everybody, they're trying to win. It's just that they're addressing the issue at the beginning of the game, and they address the issue when people interview them post game. But when you watch the highlights, you don't see people protesting in highlights. You see people playing, shooting, scoring points. You see people making tackles. You see the game of football. It's just that people are upset that
right, but
athletes are
I
using
think,
the platform,
right,
and but to conflate
right.
the actual game, with the platform that's being used, by the athletes. That's two different things that are often conflated, and because it's like you don't,
But
you watch.
in that though, but but you have a difference of opinion. And again,
Yeah,
I'm only trying to give some kind of voice to so, which I can actually understand. I don't necessarily agree, but I understand it, and that's important to understand it, even if I don't disagree, even if
yeah,
I
I
disagree
completely understand it. uh
with it.
I
So,
I completely
and he's
understand it.
saying, and his friends are saying, like, what if they disagree with that? Look, I'm going to read something that was put up on Facebook, and it's like, there is an argument that every generation and every has its cry, has its perspective, has had its suffering, and they're different and unique, and they're, so it's like, so if people don't agree that Black lives have suffered more with Black Lives Movement, and they are and they are football watchers, right, and they work hard all week, don't make this, and it's just like, I don't want to hear this, and I don't know, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to be challenged about it. I don't care. I just want to be left alone to play football or to watch football. Now, I'm not agreeing with that necessarily,
Yeah,
but I'm saying, could there are absolutely people, so much so now that these very, um, you know, absolute people who participate in the are saying, I've had enough of this. I'm done. I don't even want to watch because I'm sick of it. So that's so then now let me segue red. And now we're going to switch to about, well, I'll just read it. So somebody posted, and it's a little lengthy, but you'll get the gist of this. I'm so confused right now. I see signs all over saying Black Lives Matter. I'm just trying to figure out Black Lives Matter. It's not black cops. They don't seem to matter. It's not my black conservative friends. They're told to shut up them by the black counterparts. It's not black business owners. Their property does not mean anything. It's not blacks who fought in the military, destroyed by the Black Lives Matter protesters with disdain. So which Black Lives Matter again? I can't keep up. I just can't. I'm exhausted. What I'm supposed to do, believe, and be offended and outraged by next. 2 months ago, first responders were all the rage. Heroes. We gave them free coffee, meals, and cheers as they drove by. Today, we hate them and want them defunded because they can't be trusted. Truck drivers were the heroes as well for keeping America moving and the grocery store stocked. Today, we block the roads with protesters, drag them out of the cabs, and beat. Nurses and doctors are still cool for now, but they may be unemployed. They too are heroes, unless, of course, they truly believe all lives are filled with hate and are part of a problem like so many others. Just 45 days ago, protests weren't essential and were considered criminal, selfish, and murderous, gloriously critical and celebrated. All of the obvious criminal and murderous activities are simply ignored. If you protest, you are selfish and you will spread a virus. If you protest, loot, and riot for social justice, you are a warrior and the virus sees. Trust the experts. No, not those experts. Don't wear masks. For 3 months, nothing was more important than social distance. In fact, liberties for it. Canceled schools, medical, blah, 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 all of that stuff, businesses. Then came social justice, and social distance was no more. Things are more cut and dry, though. 1,000 people at 3 memorials for someone they never even met. It's a matter of respect, but 100 or less people, Black Lives Matter. Of course they do. Then multiple black police officers and individuals were killed during. I don't see any outrage. Black individually owned businesses burned to the ground. Silence. Deadliest weekend in Chicago. Nothing. Really confused now. Look at the data. No, not that data. Do the math. No, you can't do the math like that. Only the experts can interpreting the data differently. So just listen to the black community leaders. No, not them. If you speak, you are part of the problem. If you ask, you don't understand. If you don't ask, you don't care. It's also unpredicting. Nothing adds up. I don't understand. So that's a little bit, but you get the gist.
Yeah, and I think that this is so the quote that often comes to mind is one of like the most edgy quotes of Martin Luther King. Let me see. Yeah, one of the most edgy quotes of Martin Luther King. Like where is well, I'm definitely not gonna write that. And so he said that I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that the present tension in the South is a necessary phase of the transition from obnoxious negative peace in which Negroes passively accepted his unjust plight to a substantive and positive peace in which all men will respect the dignity uh, and worth of humankind. And so when we talk about, when I listen to sort of like the the frustration from sort of the quote unquote white moderate, you often hear a lot of the specific talking points that like will continue to be reoccurring. They'll talk about Chicago as if, you know, the black community or the plight of black people are representative of Chicago, one specific place, one city in America, amongst other cities. You'll talk about you'll often throw black cops in there and black military in there, but not address the issues that black cops and black veterans actually address as it pertains to the unjust treatment of them in these institutions, and how if they were white, they would not be experiencing the level of persecution and the level of treatment that they're receiving, especially with physicians in healthcare. You know, like if you go on Twitter, literally, like among any other time in history, black physicians are really voicing their opinions about how they are treated as they were going through school, as they were going through medical school, during their residencies, even treating patients, and the things they had to look past and they had to accept just to even become a physician. You know, even EMTs. I mean, if we're literally talking about this, Breonna Taylor was an EMT. She was killed unjustly by police officers, and they still have, there's no accountability for that. And so to that point, it's like if you're gonna try to lump all these civil, you know, all these different things into it and say you don't understand, but then the killers of Breonna Taylor are still there, you know, they're still out on the street. Like it shows me that, you know, like it just tells me that like that post is very insincere, because they are not informed when they're writing this. And so, you know, we could have a voice of opinion, and we could you know, argue which way or not. But when there are specific examples that you're just looking past to plead a point, then it's really hard for me to give that the respect that it probably deserves, because it just comes across as
So,
very
so
insincere.
it's interesting. Okay, so your takeaway is if it's very insincere, and when you said that, that felt dismissive, but then you said something underneath after that. I don't know that this post is insincere. I think there's levels of understanding that changes that perspective. It's who's willing to go deeper, to the deeper levels, accept the challenge to go to that deeper level. Who's willing to do that? Not a lot of people have the time, the energy. Like, even as you bring up Breonna Taylor again, and we talked a little bit about this the last podcast, like there is there are that why these guys are still out, because of how police officers and their intent even going into that situation, so that they're not just like let off a hook just because this is being examined. And the truth is that prosecutors are looking at this and how cops are allowed to go in, police officers go into that type of situation. They did not want her to die. They didn't want to kill her. So on both sides, sometimes there has to, you have to, and it's not easy to. It's not easy to. I don't know that this is insincere. I think it's a perspective. Now now do you want to really, you know, pick this apart? Let's unpack that. You know, let's see what's underneath all of this and look at the deeper understandings. Like you just, being a Black person in any field, police officers. I mean, I can't imagine being a gun. And you have to be in constant conflict with what's happening right now. Have to be. But to do the job, to keep the job, that has to be contained somehow. And you still have it as you are ordered to proceed to some degree, right?
Yeah, I think to your point of like your response to the word insincere, that's how black people feel when they hear
Yeah.
people bring up Chicago, and people bring up all these sort of these, you know, quote unquote
Happening there. Like
dog.
you're like but it's bad.
Well,
And
but is it bad because there's a lot of black people, or is it bad because of the situation in the institutions and the segregation that is currently there, that that perpetuates these problems that happen to people?
so but the black on black, from the outside white perspective, okay, we don't live in these communities, and these communities have taken years and years and years and years to have this all be the way it is right now, okay. And it's, there's no disagreement about that, right? But the black on black crime is real, and white people look at that and it's, look at white people and their racism. You're doing this to yourselves as well. You're doing this to yourselves. Stop that.
I think
Stop the common sense. Stop.
I think I think it does, it does it becomes difficult to look at that when you have the combination of white people that are being hypercritical of a community that is disenfranchised, and then they use the term black on black crime, as they separate crime, which is, shouldn't be, tacked on to race, and they try to plead the case for, like all lives matter and being all inclusive. And so the clear distinction of that, really just looking at where the term black on black crime came from, and what is the purpose of using that term, when what we're talking about is not black on black crime, but really the term, the concept of crime in an impoverished area with very low opportunities, and with the population that is systemically and historically disenfranchised. And so for people to navigate that, it's difficult. And then when you tackle on you associate that with black people particularly, and say that this is a black people problem, when you understand the context of black people are experience essentially the most health disparities. Black people experience the least opportunities for economic improvement. Black people experience the worst advantages of education. They're more likely to experience the worst schools. They're more likely to be fired from their jobs. They're more likely to not be hired for their jobs, even if they have qualifications. They're more likely to be shunned out of living in certain areas because there are actual laws on the books that are restricting black people from moving into those areas. And then you compound all those with a global pandemic, and then you compound all those with a recession, and you compound all those with really like institutions that perpetuate racism and stuff. And so you have to look at it. You have to take a step back and say, like, okay, if we're talking about coming together and helping one another and doing all that, but then you talk about well, look at Chicago and black on black crime. It's like, that's where the understanding becomes problematic, where you're trying to understand something, but in reality, like if we're trying to come together, why would you try to use Chicago and black on black crime as an example? Uh,
Well, people who are just living lives.
yeah,
They're look, when you're just trying to work a job, you've got 4 kids, so you're overwhelmed trying to provide for your family, and you just doing the best you can. You see this defund the police, and you're going, wait, they were the heroes of 9/11. When you have something happen to you want the cops, but we want to hate on them. And again, we're taking the time to go to understand the intricacies of where this outcome are. And yet in the outcome, it has, a vantage point. If I'm being like, if I have an experience with when my kids were young, and I lived in the suburbs of Chicago at the time, and I literally around I was directing a play, and at the church I belonged to, and I got a nighttime, and it was a black man who was like, hey, I'll shovel your walk, like I'll shovel the snow side, part of my driveway. And I just was like, man, thank you, but I don't, I don't have a single mom, broke. And because I was directing this play, church family had made a bunch of food for me, so I didn't have to think about it. And he's like, oh, I'm just kind of hungry. I said, listen, I have some gift to you, but I said it like 5 times because I felt bad. I was like, I don't have any money. And so you don't have to do it. That's okay. So he shoveled everything. And I put together this whole forks, knives, drinks, a full package of everything. And I think I threw in a couple dollars. That's all I had. I had nothing. Really, I gave it to him, and I was so grateful. He'd done a great job. And he looked in the bag, and he got angry at me. I was like, I told you I had no money. He's like, and he started cursing at me. Like, how I do all this, and this is what you do to me, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, really? I already, this was our deal. He took the money and threw the food. And I was like, wow, okay. What do I do with really angry and violated? Like, I was really honest, and I care about people. And I admit in a suburb, and a black man in the evening, single mother with 3 kids, knocks at my door. I'm like, okay, I tried, but it left a really bad. So there are systemic reasons for all of that. There is. But what do I do? I try. It still didn't happen right. Is he accountable for anything that he did? How he treated me? Is there any? So this is just a little violated by some person. This happened to be a black person.
yeah, and I think that's
I've
the
never been
distinction.
slapped by a young black. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the distinction right there. Like this happened. This is a story of people interacting with people. it just so happens that the person happened to be black. But there's a distinction between looking at it that way and saying that this is what happens. This is what happens to when you interact with black people, where it comes with a different level of it comes with a different level of understanding when you say when you use that as an example of dealing with black people opposed to dealing with people. Like, this person just happened to be black. And that goes to the same point of, like, with crime, where you say black on black crime versus crime in a high crime area. If it's black crime in a high crime area, you're associating with that. You're associating all the crime that happens with black people with black people in general living in Chicago.
Well, I feel like black people, like when we say black on black crime too, it's like, again, from an outside white perspective, if you're not in and know all the ins and outs of it, within those communities that are so disenfranchised, right? But the people who live in those communities are to their own people are keeping them hostage. Just like when my son was in Afghanistan, for him to throw over the fence to the kids in Afghanistan, he's like, in Kabul, and he's like, don't send any of it, because when we do, the adults go over and like smash them away so that they can get it. He's like, the Afghanis hold, if they don't participate in the Taliban, they're going to kill family members, stuff like that. So that's something I'm unaware of to the degree that I understand it now. So I feel like the Black community at times is held hostage to their own communities as well. And yes, there is all these reasonings, but if you're only on the outside looking in, you're like, stop that. Let's stop that. Let's start there. Let's stop that. How do we stop that?
Yeah, and that's and that analogy, I suppose, is not. I think it goes to the point of, like, people that say that stuff are people that don't know, and they're frustrated that they don't know. Don't necessarily have enough information to speak on that issue. And so if we're talking about the power of words and having an understanding or a perspective, in order for somebody to take that perspective and respect that difference of opinion, you have to be informed. And so when you talk about these blanket things about Chicago and black on black crime, but you've never been there, or you're not a part of that community, and you don't understand the context in which all these things are happening, you're ill-informed, then you say these things, and then when people that are more informed than you address the things that you're saying, and the rebuttal is, well, I have a job, and, like, I'm trying to do all these things. I'm tired. I don't know people there. All these different things that, like, expose that you're just ill-informed. Then it comes to the sincerity of, like, what you're talking about, and that often goes to where my mind goes, where I grew up in an area that is known for a high crime rate. And I understand that those are because of institutions and generations of trauma and all these different things. And if you were to take those people out of that situation and put them in other situations, that those people would make different choices that are probably more adaptive to positive more positive adaptive behaviors opposed to maladaptive behaviors. And that's exclusive, that's independent of them being black people, but that's just that's dependent on them just being human and people. But when you look at the intersections of them being black in that situation, it predisposes them, or there's data to support that, given a particular
Definitely.
population, and put them in a situation that they can,
Definitely.
put them in a situation where they can't escape, and there's institutions that sort of go against them in direct and indirect ways. Then you know what the end result is going to be. You know what happens when there's no job
Right.
opportunities, there's lack of educational opportunities, there's lack of economic opportunities, and there's nowhere for people to go, and they still got to pay bills. And then there's the conflicts of human nature, where in any given situation there's going to be robbing, there's going to be thieving, there's going to be homicides, there's going to be those things. You already know that's human nature. It happens. It stands the test of time. But when you have those intersections happen all at once, you know the end result is what the end result is going to be. And then the criticism becomes, okay, well, given that we all have data and we know how this is going to be, you can't be hypercritical of the people that are experiencing that, and also trying to pay bills and raise their kids, because and so it comes to a place of privilege where the people that are critical of this, that are talking about black on black crime and Chicago and all that, are the very people that are not experiencing those things. And they're not experiencing those things, one, because they're not black, or two, because they are worried about their stuff in their own community that they're trying to struggle with, and they're not informed. And so that's where it becomes, where like,
But even if they but caring about victimized by their own people, the question, even though the question is like, well, what about this, they're still caring. Like, people are being hurt, are being destroyed, like, so I do, and again, I'm things that are real perspectives from people who do they want to delve as deeply as the answer to those questions need? Probably not. And it was interesting, and again, it takes me to another thing that I watched, and I'm going to send to you week as well. I watched this Netflix documentary that Chelsea Handler did.
oh yeah, yeah, I thought that was I
And
thought
it's
that was
called
really good.
Hello, Privilege. It's me, Chelsea. And she did this a couple years ago, quite frankly. And so I watched it and on this whole white privilege. Well, she was, when it was first starting to come out, and she went to examine it. And she's from, gosh, I want to say she's from Michigan, from New Jersey. And she was in a large family, youngest, and she like went off the rails, just her personally, at like 17. And she started dating a black guy in her school. And she started living at his house with his mother and his grandmother. She got twice and had abortions. So she went on to be Chelsea Handler, got out of the situation, and her boyfriend got arrested and spent 14 years in jail. And now he's out of jail, and he's trying to like put his life back together. And so she went back, and she went to a lot of different people to talk about white privilege. But she then her own life, which made her actually kind of uncomfortable. And what that revealed, and it was a prime example of what we're at right now.
Yeah.
So she's a woman, white, in the car She gets stopped. They get stopped by the police. She's got pot on her, or nothing. The cops let her go, but they arrest him. So now he begins this process of being in the judicial system, and all the consequences, everything that she did, exactly the same things. He eventually did harder drugs on the wheel, right? His mother was a drug addict. He didn't want to be, but then he started down this road. But then he became a part of the system. He began doing harder drugs. And Chelsea, because she was never like, he got arrested for doing the same things that she did 3 or 4 times, or got arrested once, not once, doing the exact same thing he did.
Mm-hmm.
And she and her family finally came in and was like, this is bad. And what she realized, and what it was very clear as they were talking, is that the only thing that was different was it was a guy, and he's black, and she was this cute white who was doing just the same things. She had no accountability whatsoever, and got to go have a great, and he's still, finally out trying to make life work.
Yeah.
And that actually was revolting. It showed the disparity just so. I would recommend it really highly. Sad, really eye-opening. That in and of itself was real. And even she went into like clubs, like an all-black thing where it's mainly black people who want to speak openly about their experience. So she brings this crew in, her, to talk about, white privilege. And one chick was just like, I actually feel really angry that you're here, only speaking because I want to say that, and I even don't like the fact that I'm addressing this, but like you're the epitome of white privilege. You get to bring your crew in with you, ask these questions, and really kind of handed her ass to her. And it was real. It's like, but then you go, well, what do you want me to do? But it was very interesting. I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, and like and I thought that was really like a when we're talking about like using your privilege in a positive way. I mean, that was a perfect example of it, because like when black people talk about these things and they try to like address the issues of like injustice and being treated unfairly, then one of the counter points is, well, look at what you guys are doing in your community. How are we supposed to take you guys seriously if you guys don't take yourself seriously? And so it's like, to that point, it's like, when these things are happening and people are trying to process this and navigate their lives despite understanding how they're going to be treated, and then you just try to address that, it becomes sort of a affront to your existence. And it's just really interesting. I think if black people had the answers to how to address this properly, we would be in a different place. But it's ultimately, it's tough. It's tough, and I'm definitely glad that like things like this are coming out and continuing.
Well, what I really, when you were just speaking about like the difference in kind of using your, I think that's kind of the example of like, so here's the difference between one way or the other. Okay. So as we were talking about Colin Kaepernick, right?
Yeah.
And how you choose to turn on a football game, you want to watch football, and you're addressed with this political perspective. Someone's taking a stance, right?
Yeah.
But he's using the very venue that he's paid to just play football at, right? So you're watching football and you think, I'm here to watch football, but I have to, in order to watch football, I have to hear this perspective that I don't want to be challenged by. I just want to watch football and I don't want to think about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Chelsea, so if you want to watch football, it's a requirement that you be kind of force fed this political perspective, right?
Well,
And you have to kind of,
I would.
you don't have a choice
Yeah, I think.
unless you choose not to watch. So
Yeah, I think. I think the perfect example is like, why is it that addressing police brutality is a political statement, but addressing the effects that cancer has, cancer awareness isn't a political statement.
right. Well, because so one is health and one is about a community that it's very diverse and it's transient.
Not necessarily, because police brutality, cancer disproportionately affects black communities compared to white communities, and just like police brutality does. And so there are a lot of parallels between those two, and those parallels go down to how the intersections of race play a part in that. And so it becomes a broader question of why is it that that cancer isn't a political statement when there's a racial component to it, but addressing police brutality is, even though those both affect lives, and they affect both white and black, and there's a racial component to it that perpetuates the injustices in the country.
So I think sometimes I actually happen to be a Christian, right? My
Yeah.
faith is based in Judeo-Christian belief, but I absolutely disagree with. I'm ashamed of the many of the Christianizations out there. I'm appalled, repulsed, embarrassed, crying over what that looks like. And then when it talks about, so as a belief within the all perspective is that Christians, this country was founded on, our country was founded on religious freedom, right? We escaped whatever. But the very people who want to force, like even prayer in school, in a public school, I sent my kids to a small and where my faith could be a part of their education.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be in public schools. It's not the appropriate place for it. And my discussion with people often is, well, if you had a Muslim, the public school said your child has to pray, during, we're going to kneel and pray and do all of the things that a Muslim would, they would be out of their minds for that even to be a part of anything. And they're ignoring the fact that we have a tree, and you would be appalled at that, but you're doing the very same thing by wanting it to be your Christian faith.
Yeah.
That's to your point of saying, look, we have no problem with I think it's the difference between people do look at public health issue. It's like when people try to start to talk about gay and black, they're different. If you're gay, you're gay. If you're black, you're different. And so in doing that, I think I was thinking of this example. I was listening to you. To finish the point of, like, I think with the football, it's it feels like to have to look at this, and forced when I'm a fan, and you don't have the right to force me to have to look at. And whereas like with what Chelsea's done, I chose to go see her program. I made a choice to do that.
Yeah. And
not program, not everybody's going to go to that, but it's, if you want to understand this more, this is available to you. Whereas in a setting as football, where you're there to just watch football, and you don't, maybe you don't even want to be confronted about cancer either.
yeah.
You know, we shouldn't do that either.
But
right?
But
Like,
the
if we're not gonna,
response is that the response is that people aren't boycotting cancer, and so understanding sort of like this all doesn't happen in a vacuum. Why is it that people will look past cancer, but whenever you mention something that affects the black community, you just want them to just play football, and you don't want them to show that they're actually
the same
human.
community would tell actors to just act and shut up. You know, I mean,
yeah,
it's just do your job and shut up. I don't want to.
But then
hear from you.
But then
I just want to watch you perform.
Yeah, and I think the hypocrisy comes to when people were like during the whole coronavirus thing, where people it's a public health emergency, and people were trying to open up their doors so that they could cut hair and they could pay their bills, but like you're putting people at risk of dying by doing that. And so it becomes like, okay, the hypocrisy is, okay, if life matters and we're supposed to be equal and we're supposed to be like all for each other, then why would you risk making money over killing people when you could literally, like, when you could do something else?
Well, because these, Stephen, people are losing. Yeah,
like you could do something else,
but
like that's just at the end of the day,
But here's the thing. I go to Walmart, like if I go to Walmart or I go to the grocery store or I go to, like, there are thriving liquor stores.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have friends who I'm like, thank God they're not closing the liquor stores,
Yeah.
But it's, why is it these places that are more corporate are remaining open, and the small,
well, it's one of the
businesses,
yeah,
we take the precautions.
Yeah, one of the things is because there is a financial cost to taking these precautions, and so a lot of the salons and everybody, like one of the more popular salons and hairstylist places in northeast Portland, they had to shut down because they had to look at that. They had to look at how much it's going to cost to adapt to the precautions that were available, because they actually had to they have to hire people that are they have to hire people specifically to follow people around and wipe things down and make sure that they're clean and sanitized. And so just from an economic perspective, I mean, it perpetuates these things, but like at the end of the day, it's because they're trying to keep people safe. And so a lot of the businesses and stuff like that are trying to open up. They don't have the liberty to hire people as full-time employees to wipe all these places down and limit all this stuff, because it's that's the reality, and so to overlook that and make it because like it's a control thing. There is a level of control, but we're in a global pandemic. I mean, like it's like these are the experts are coming up with this stuff, and these experts are physicians, and health professionals.
But you know what? The mayor in Oregon, in Gresham is a big suburb, Oregon, and within that community, the mayor quit. He had to quit because he's also a private business owner, tanking, and people are going into bankruptcy. Families who own businesses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like he had to he stopped to take care of his family, and he had and their business is no more
Yeah. And
at this point.
yeah.
So he's like, and there's and as we've seen in Reopening Too Soon, it's like
just like the cases just
yes,
spike.
Listen, I just told you I had a family member who's my aunt and lived together, and she, had to come home because she just got confirmed diagnosed with a text as we were talking that, yep, she has this, and she's sick. She's really, and my aunt had heart problems and stuff. So so it's like this social distancing, you're right, it saves lives, but the people who I'm opening a small business as this hit, and I'm not kidding you, I will never open a small business where social action is part of the equation, in-person interaction ever again.
Yeah.
And I'm so good with that I owe people monies now, and because people still, I know small coffee businesses who are like still under their lease. They can't, they're losing everything. And they're trying to stay afloat, and they're just not going to be able to.
Yeah. I mean, like one of the things that happened.
It's everywhere you go.
Yeah. Like one of the things that happened is, I was working with a team on a documentary, and me getting paid was predicated on them getting into film festivals and making money off of that, and then all this stuff happened. So it everybody's feeling it,
and that's
like everybody's feeling it. Like it's
everybody
like
is.
nobody like there's nobody that doesn't have a story like that. But then it becomes like, okay, well, what is it? Is it worth it to sort of somehow make it on top when everybody is failing, or is it to come together and make sure that we all survive this, and that often becomes the conversation.
So how do we? So I think that's why when this do this, I know that there's language and purpose to stirring the pot. I have always I want to be effective. I want to really change something, like you do as well. Different, but I really do. Like, how can we change when somebody's so overwhelmed in their lives? And to have to, like, again, I used this analogy a couple podcasts ago, but like, if you had cancer, you care about cancer. Well, field, and you don't have anybody who's mentally unstable and hurting and all that. And you're like, yeah. And you're not really listening necessarily, because that niche of, problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's some of it. It's, if you're not in it. And I think some people are feeling like, well, you got to get in, and now we're not going to give you a choice.
Well, I think it becomes, if you want to speak on it, then you better get in. Otherwise, don't speak on it.
Be held accountable for
it. Yeah.
Right.
Like, and that becomes a thing. Like, you have to be, if you're going to speak on it and you want to voice your opinion and have a perspective, then get involved and understand what you're talking about.
And like I said, boycotting it. Look, I'm not thrilled with Amazon that Jeff Bezos doesn't pay taxes.
Yeah,
Amazon doesn't pay taxes. And I stopped using it. I'm like, and it's convenient, but I can't believe that.
Yeah.
I just can't believe it. And so the family member's like, I'm not watching football because I don't want to have to be forced to hear something or to think about something. Black people badly. I do my part. I'm just raising my family and I'm focused on that. And I just want to watch football.
Yeah.
I don't hurt anybody. buddy I care about. I don't want to be forced to have to be in
Well,
if all I'm really supposed to be.
yeah, I think it becomes a matter of well, it speaks to the issue that like black people have for the white community, is that, when 9/11 happens, and when cancer happens, and when all these things happen, like we all come together for one thing or another, and that's the expectation as like
Yeah,
Americans. But when things are happening to black Americans, it becomes a political issue, and becomes something that
yeah,
has to have a perspective on it. And so the frustration comes with, okay, well, you have no problem watching us risk our bodies for your entertainment, and you have no problem with us, doing all these things to give you an escape from your life. But when we want to address issues that are affecting us, you feel like you're being forced to see it, to see us as human, and in our plights and stuff. And so the frustration becomes, like, why is it that we have no problem, rallying against your causes, but when it's a cause that affects us and that we have control over, why is it a political topic? When we're just
so
when
what
we're addressing,
so here's
you know
a question, right? So here's the thing though. So think about um approach. Look, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, how they went about this was different.
yeah,
When it was their time and when that happened, um, and just even like the fist,
yeah,
like it's a fist in your face, and I get the fist. I'm just saying when it's when 9/11 happened, we all united, and it was against people. But I remember a certain sect of Muslim, they're not even Muslim buttons, and he was murdered in Phoenix. Actually, I can't think of anybody who didn't think that that was Pauline. Um, but I can't. I don't know anybody who thought that that was okay to do because in like 11. Um, and so I think sometimes, again, I'm only trying to. Oh, you're right about that. There's people who don't. They're like, well, we do care, but now you're things that people are being hurt, people are being killed. So all of that, like the reaction to 9/11, like no, people didn't start burning things down. They did kill some people of different culture. So
yeah,
the opposition could be because of the aggression and the damage and the which it's being stated, and the expectation that you know
yeah. And I think only time will tell with that, because it will be interesting, as the looting and the rioting and everything dies down, how consistent that same message will still be, where even when there's not looting and
yeah,
rioting, will there still be that same sort of opposition? Uh, and if so, then that comes back to sort of like my point of like it being insincere, because there's at some point you have to look at this as a human's right, as a thing that's affecting Americans and humans, opposed to, just you having to find some, you have to personally identify with it in order to be a part of the cause. It has to be, a conversation of, do you see this as a problem for human beings, and are you acknowledging that black people are human just like white people are, Because if that's the case, then it's not
And
an issue, you know. But if we're not even at that
but
point, then
and I would say to you that a lot of the opposition is that people do think Black people are people, and that the majority okay, and it is in re-education and real seeing, not, I think it's about seeing. Back to, I worked at an all-Black office in Chicago, and I got an education. I saw people in a way that I hadn't seen them in life, not because I chose not to or whatever. It wasn't in my circle,
yeah,
and I saw things differently. So I think that for me, I'm on that, like, I protested, but after a while I was like, okay, what now? What do I want? And this is how this came about.
yeah,
And then trying to, I want to, and I see it. So I think social media, and I also think in the entertainment world, is just how everybody showed up. Suddenly we see all these ads where it's all Black actors, shows suddenly are, coming back. And like you said last time, it was like, well, they had those all in the can and they didn't use them. And now that, and that's right. White America needs to see all sides of Black America. And it's been highlighted mainly with a negative.
yeah,
And that's not okay. That has to change. That has to change. And to lead that to a large degree. And I think that that's going to be productive. I really do. I think that that's the way in. If you change somebody's heart and understand, and they start to care about you, they see you differently. And this is an example.
yeah,
My eldest son was a teenager in the height of Chicago Bulls, fame about it, right? And we were sitting in the car at the bank, and he was in the passenger seat, was looking at a car ahead of us. And suddenly he said to me, "Mom, I wouldn't want you to date." And I was just like, what? In my brain. And I looked in the car ahead of us, and it was a couple that, and I was like, really? I was like, huh, what makes you think that way? And he's like, I don't know. It just wouldn't make me feel. It's like, okay. I was like, well, what if that guy was Michael Jordan? What would you think of that? And of course he's like, and I realized that it was just familiarity. It was hailing someone, respecting somebody he could identify with, that he really liked, but it was also limited exposure.
yeah,
And different. I think, again, it's in the heart and in the head. And when you care, you change. But you have to make people care. Getting angry too. But ultimately, it's about caring and understanding.
yeah,
I believe change that perspective.
yeah,
And that's what I saw in the Chelsea Handler thing. I was appalled that this chick got to go have, and this other guy didn't. That made me mad at her. Isn't that, it was like, I was mad at her. She gets to tra-la-la-la-la, off she goes while he still struggles. I'm like, throw him some dough, man. Throw him some of your millions.
yeah. And like that very feeling is literally, like that very feeling is the plight, when they
Yeah.
talk about the plight
Yeah.
of Black America, and
Yeah.
sort of the privilege of not even being able to see that, like it wasn't until she
Yeah.
addressed it and looked at the effects of it that you see that it's, it's always in hindsight, like it's not something you see, but like time will
And
tell,
yeah,
you know, it's,
and that's what I hope. So
yeah, yeah, time will tell. And so,
we've covered a lot of ground.
oh yeah, for
And time
sure.
will tell.
Yeah. But I think we'll wrap it up right now. I think it was a really great conversation,
Yep.
and it's really interesting now because with all the social distancing and all the stuff that's happening just across the country. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff available to like read. That's really contemporary about this, like a lot of articles, a couple of books are coming out,
Mhm.
podcasts, movies, TV shows. It's a lot of those things are, there's
And see,
a lot of contemporary stuff to sort of like
that's what I'm
reference,
talking about.
like it, and I think
Well,
this sets this moves the conversation forward in a way that like we haven't necessarily
that's right.
seen before, uh, which is interesting, you know, really interesting. And so as we
I
sort
think
of,
that that's what we were.
yeah,
Hang on, before we wrap, I want to tell you about one more thing. One more thing that I added today or this early this morning on YouTube, which I think would be anybody who's listening. You can go to YouTube. Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, and it was written by this woman who was a slave. Um, and it's a full book by Harriet Ann Jacobs, writing as Linda Brent, and it's a 8-part series on YouTube about a woman who was a slave and her family as slaves. It is like not contemporary, and it is contemporary. And I think that that's what I was saying, is that I think this is what's coming out. All people, not just the contrived, manipulative, disrespectful version of what wants to show Americans. Even Snoop Dogg, I saw him on Jada Pinkett's Red Table Talk, and he was talking about Gayle King, about how he felt like she was not supporting God after Kobe died. God, that just kills.
yeah,
And she made the comment about what had happened years ago with him, and Doug just ripped her apart, and she got death threats and everything. But he went on Jada Pinkett's show, and he talking about the stereotype of Black males and how they've been represented in rap and videos and all of that kind of stuff. And he goes, when I try to do something good musically, it doesn't sell. And so the production companies and the people, they're like, you got to go back to the stuff you were doing before, because that's what they want. You got to give them what they want. So this, hopefully the broader perspective, is going to be the thing that also serves as the ultimate real, and that's the goal, hopefully. God, it's gotta change.
yeah, it's
It's gotta change.
it's I think that, yeah, only time will tell. I think that's just
Time will tell.
that's what it comes down to, like only time will tell. And
And
when,
we'll keep bringing different topics, and
yeah, it's yeah, I think with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Again, it's always a great conversation. Always a lot of stuff that we pull back from
yep.
and have to dwell on it and process over the next week, and come back.
Listen, chew on it. Chew on it and have an opinion about it. Like it, dislike it, it's okay.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so be safe. You're definitely in the heat of, you're definitely in the throes of it right now. And so be safe.
We are. So
wash your hands, drink a lot of water.
You too.
And I will.
And wear your freaking masks.
Oh my gosh, I have a collection of maybe like 8 or 9 right now. So I have an N95 mask. I have a bunch of cloth ones, some like disposable ones. Uh, you know,
Everybody, come on.
yes, like
Wear the frickin' mask when you're going out, man.
yeah, it's necessary. You know, it's necessary. And so,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, till next time.
Until
It's been
next
great.
time. Yep. Have a good one. Be safe, and I will chat with you later.